We have all heard about Game of Thrones, and even more about the characters that are part of its story: Daenerys, Jon, Cersei, Arya, among others. Throughout the book and the series, we see how these characters evolve, develop, and act according to their interests, which are often grey. This is how the characters in this story are special. They do not follow strict stereotypes, nor do they develop as if it were a fairy tale. They are special because they are similar to us, to what we are as human beings in real life, morally great characters. There are characters that we love and others that we hate. However, there is a character that stands out among others, and not for magical abilities, not for brute strength, but for her story full of nonsense and her development that in some way or another becomes an inspiration and representation for many women who watch the series. It is about Sansa Stark, a girl who went from being a damsel in a bubble to a cunning and cautious queen. Sansa starts out as a child at the beginning of the series. A girl raised for just that, to be a girl, to fulfill the role of a woman in that society in a perfect way. For this, she is taught to knit, to be reserved, flirtatious, submissive, and delicate. She is perfect in fulfilling those characteristics and in being a very feminine woman. Behind imposed, Sansa has no aspiration other than to do what she is told, and this is noticeable throughout the first season of the series, where she meets Joffrey, the heir to the throne, and her father pledged her to him to make alliance. Sansa is naive, so she accepts, believing that she knows Joffrey and loves him, and will be happy as being his wife. So she begins to fulfill the role of wife with Joffrey, defends him even though the boy's acts are unjustifiable, prefers to be with him more than with their own family, and believes every word that comes out of his mouth. A huge mistake. Sansa will release later that having this submissive and helpless attitude all the time leads her to terrible fates and takes away her control over what happens around her. But for her to release this, it will take a long time, since as she herself says, she learns slowly, but she learns. During the first seasons, we see how Sansa lives under the shadow of others. She is just a puppet, a damsel in distress dealing with the mourning for the death of her family. Her arc is based on the fact that all the grief she is experiencing will be a key piece for her behavior and her way of being in the future, where distrust and caution play an important role in the decisions she makes, with the sole purpose of protecting her home. The actions that Sansa takes after leaving that duel are actions that are born of a learning process and that demonstrate the maturity that the character is acquiring after a long time of being manipulated and of being a victim. Sansa starts depending on others, and this dependence helps her to learn from them and gain strength to be able to act on her own without the need to follow something imposed and without the need to look after others before herself. Sansa then goes from being an immature girl enclosed in a bubble without understanding her reality, manipulated by others and in constant terror, to becoming an intelligent woman who uses the resources available to her to achieve her goal and look after herself and her family. The aspiration of many women feeds on this wonderful development of Sansa, since many of them have lived under the parameters of society and under the hand of men, manipulated and violated in some way like Sansa, and have been liberated to make their own decisions and live on their own, inspired by female characters who have lived through all these stages. Still, many viewers, mostly men, criticize this character as weak and spoiled, referring to when she was a child, and arrogant, referring to when she grows up. Sansa has been a child for most of the series, and the realism in her is in having these immature attitudes that any other child has, considering she was always raised to please others, because that's what being a woman was all about. Being spoiled and weak was the beginning of the character. Being arrogant, the result of her experience, and there is nothing wrong with being an arrogant woman if the environment in which you live requires it to survive. Sansa only tries to survive in response to the damage she suffered as a child. Her seriousness and distrust is only a defense mechanism against possible damage, a mechanism that most women acquire after being victims. As I mentioned before, Sansa is a feminine woman, raised under those qualities and to assume a market role. Throughout the series, Sansa never stopped being feminine. Despite all the events that mark her, she still has a taste for elements socially considered feminine: dresses, sewing, singing, and dancing. This archetype of the character is fundamental, since Sansa's ways of acting is non-violent. She does not fight. She has never picked up a sword in her life, and she is not fundamental when planning battles. It is not because she is a woman, since in the series there are many female characters that perform these activities considered masculine, and normally those characters are considered more epic, such as Arya or Daenerys. Even though Sansa is much more feminine than masculine, she should not be considered weak or boring. Sansa is very intelligent, and her way of acting is tied more to intellect and relationships rather than battles or magic. This is no reason to downplay the character. Even so, to qualify a character, we tend to consciously and unconsciously fall back on the balance of feminine and masculine, giving more value to masculine characteristics for being strong and less value to feminine characteristics for being weak. This is noticeable when it comes to choosing our favorite characters in the series, as all of those characters carry with them masculine qualities that make them seem stronger than characters like Sansa. Sansa for many is not considered strong because she is a female. However, whether or not a character has femininity does not make her stronger or less strong. Femininity is also a strength, and Sansa proves it by holding on to those feminine characteristics and acting according to her position to perform important feats. For example, despite not having any knowledge of battle, thanks to Sansa, the Northern allies managed to win the battle against the Boltons, thanks to the support of the Valley soldiers who respond to the call she gave. If it were not for her, the Starks would not have been able to regain the North. Even though she was not present in the battle fighting, she was influential in gathering allies. That kind of actions shows that Sansa can act from her feminine position, being intelligent and cautious, something that makes her strong as well. This character is a reflection of the reality of many women today and what they go through socially, the denigrations, the establishment of gender roles, violence against them, the list goes on. Sansa gives us a story of overcoming and representation of female roles as strong, showing us women that no matter how we are, we deserve to be happy, respected, and valued.